L-O-V-E. In love. And
I think you're supposed to spell L-I-V-E.
oh yeah, that makes more sense.
We are L-I-V-E.
But it's love and entrepreneurship. So it kind of makes sense to say we are in L-O-V-E. Are we in L-O-V-E?
You were just trying to play that off. All right, we're live.
So we are L-O-V-E. We are
live. L-I-V-E live.
These are jokes, people. These are jokes. So welcome to another episode of Love and
Entrepreneurship.
So if you tuned in, we are doing something different. We are streaming on multiple channels today.
Woo!
Upgrade.
We upgrading. All right, so this is our stream. We are on live right now on Facebook, live on Periscope. We are live on YouTube, and we are live on...
Well, we're not live on YouTube yet.
Oh, okay. Not live on YouTube yet. Next week. I think we have to wait 24 hours for that one.
But it doesn't matter, because you are here, and we are here, and we are glad that you tuned in. So shout out to all my viewers. I see some people popping in, because guess what? You ain't got no job, man.
You ain't got no job, man. How you get fired on your day off?
So if, everybody's kind of at home, of course, due to what's going on in our country, actually in our world, it's really impacting everybody.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what we're going to talk about today, how this whole thing has really been affecting us just personally in our business. But we want to hear from you too. Like what's, how you've been affected by
what's going on. We want to talk to you about managing emotion during crisis. And I know that a lot of you have been dealing with some pretty tough things. And we have been too. But we want to, trust me, there has always been a way out, especially for believers. So if you are tuning in today and you are struggling during this time, the time of crisis, then please stay plugged in today, because today we're going to give some really helpful tips of what we do in order to stay positive, upbeat, and just have a great outlook on life,
Yeah, so what we're going to talk about today is actually managing your emotions during this time of crisis. Because I know for me personally, I'm a person who I'm pretty consistent. I'm pretty level-headed.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when, the pressure is on, you might not necessarily think that I'm stressing because I just deal with stress a little different. I tend to be a person who goes into isolation because I try to get myself together before I can actually give to other people or begin to pour into other people. So I kind of isolate myself.
I had to really deal with that part because I didn't know that's how he processed information. He processed grief that way. He processes everything. And if you know Chris personally, then you know that he pretty much stays even tone no matter what we're going through, no matter what the situation is. And I mean, there are times when that used to make me extremely upset. Yeah. I remember just sharing something personal with you guys. I remember when we lost the baby in 2018 and, in 2013.
Yeah.
When we lost our first child in 2013, we had a very dark time in our lives. And that was really tough for me. I went back to work like 4 weeks later, and he just kind of didn't talk about it. And so we kind of went on with our daily lives, not knowing that depression was slowly sinking in, and to the point where we were having some serious issues. Yeah. We were wondering where it was stemming from, but we were actually dealing with depression, but it was depression that was not dealt with and grief that was not dealt with. And so sometimes in times of trauma and in times of hardship, things from your past can creep up. You can have emotions that you haven't felt in a very long time creep up. And if you're in a relationship, sometimes it can end up spilling out on your partner and you don't really mean it that way, but it's just coming out that way because you're under a great deal of stress. So we're going to talk about that, and we really want to hear from you today. We want to hear about how you're managing stress. We want to hear about how you're managing during this time of isolation and social distancing.
Yeah. So if you are in the chat, Facebook is where I'm actually plugged into. I know some people might be watching on some other medium, which is awesome, and I'm glad you're tuned in. But so for us, as she shared, I am typically a person, and especially during that time, I had to deal with an emotion that I never dealt with before. And in that process, it took some time for me to learn how to overcome that situation. And then, of course, a few years later, it happened again. But I learned from that situation to even share with my wife and say, look, this is what I'm feeling. This is how it's affecting me. Because I learned from the first time that she needed to hear that.
Right. I remember getting mad at him because he wasn't responding the way that I wanted him to respond, or the way that I was responding. Like, why aren't you crying? Why aren't you being depressed? Why aren't you in a dark room? Like, that's how I dealt with it at that time. But I thought because he didn't deal with it the way I was dealing with grief, that he didn't care. And that's not true, right? But sometimes the way that we communicate and the way that we handle stress and the way that we handle grief and the way that we handle any type of hardship, whether it's emotional, mental, psychological, physically, it all is different. We're different. So communication is key. Now, in all transparency, you want to know how COVID-19 has impacted our lives, our daily lives. And let me just throw it out there and just tell you what's going on, okay? So we have multiple businesses. Half of them are in education space. And then we have another business that's dealing with kids. And then we have another business that is on the investment side. Mm-hmm. And so all of our businesses that are on the education side are now closed. 100% closed. Now, I think that makes up about 80% of our overall revenue, which, as you can imagine, 80% of our overall revenue is a pretty large amount. Mm-hmm. And so the moment I received the news that all schools were closing and that we would have to be, forced to close, I went into like a mini panic mode. Yeah. But it was like real quick. It was like, oh no, what are we going to do? And then I immediately went into isolation. So the way that I process and the way that I can gather my thoughts and hear from God and do things that aren't necessarily the way that other people would handle things when it comes to business, okay? So I went into isolation and I said, okay, God, you know that this was happening. You knew that this was coming. We had a little bit for a reserve for our business, but we had just opened up a new location and we had literally spent almost all of our reserve just building that up. So we hadn't gotten a chance to build it back up because this is only maybe 6 months in since we opened up the new location. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what are we going to do? Number one, what am I going to do for my employees? I have 27 people on my payroll that I am going to have to let them know I can't pay you after this paycheck. Yeah. And
And that's a tough situation.
I was under a great amount of stress.
Yeah.
I was under a great amount of stress because I know that these employees, they have families.
Yeah.
They depend on this money. I have people who just had babies. I have people who are single parents. And I was in a lot of anguish around this thing right here. How am I going to tell them that I cannot give them a pay after this paycheck? And it was extremely difficult to have the conversation with our HR manager that this email has to go out to everyone today. And
well, no, that was a little bit of a delay.
Well, it was like 2 days. Yeah, it was only 2 days.
Right. So you got the news like everybody.
We got the news on Thursday. I had to notify everybody Friday so that they would put things into place so that when they get their last paycheck, they can kind of exercise some wisdom and not, spend it all.
Right. So the initial news is, look, I know this is a tough time for us as well, but right now, as it looks, we're not going to be able to pay you. And that's a hard thing to tell people.
Whew.
Yeah.
That I think probably, I lost sleep that night. I probably went to bed at about 4 o'clock in the morning that night because I was up trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's
a hard place to be in too, when you're trying to figure it out and don't know what to do.
Right. And so this is where my faith kicks in because I didn't know what to do. I didn't.
Yeah.
But God does.
Yeah. So all my believers out there, people who are Christians, this is where you walk on the water.
Right. This is where you actually have to tap into your faith because I was clueless. Okay. I've never had to go, like there are some leaders who have went through, they were the leader during like 9/11. They were a leader through Katrina, through the recession. And so they have had to deal with this before. I mean, not in this type of case, but they've had to deal with, some type of a calamity that wrecked the economy, and they had to make some really harsh decisions as a result of it. And so I wanted to do something. So what I did was I contacted the next morning. So this is Friday the 13th, March 13th. Never forget that day. I woke up and I contacted my senators, all the state representatives, my district representative, my mayor, the commissioners, and any elected official that was over the Department of Education.
Anybody that can make a decision concerning government funding. Like, look, hey, this is what's going on. You guys know the deal. Y'all
because we receive, out of that 80%, out of that 80%, 50% of that 80% comes from a government contract or some type of government funding. So we was like, okay, we can at least try to save that part. If we can try to save that part, then we can at least take care of some overhead expenses while we're closed and try to work something out. But I contacted everybody. Didn't hear back until later on that weekend. I got an email back from the commissioner.
Well, you gotta go back though, because we're talking about dealing with or managing your emotions.
Oh, right.
In the time of trouble.
Right.
So, I mean, it's good to hear the end, but the root is like, what do you do in the midst of it? How are you responding to what you're dealing with? Are you faced with reacting or making a conscious decision that says, look, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to personally deal with it.
Right. Oh, thank you. So if I go back to Friday 13th, I can tell you that day there was like a sense of peace that came over me. And I said, I am going to do everything in my power to try to either salvage our relationship with the government or try to save these jobs or try to give some type of, and then we have food that our students are dependent on every day. That was a different.
That's a whole different dynamic. And plus, you just ordered food.
Right, we just received the delivery of food that day before. So we had a huge truck full of food that we ordered for the next week, and then that week was canceled. That week was closed. So we're like, now what are we going to do with all this food? Okay?
Right.
So I had to think of something, and I had to think of something quick, okay? I'm getting ready to send this email out to everybody to say, hey, this is it. We're getting ready to close. This is what's happening. This virus is serious. We're going to have to take some extreme precautions to making sure that we are not a part of the problem and spreading it. But, and I have to tell you that I am not going to be able to continue your pay. But if you're a full-time teacher, then you will continue getting paid through the Department of Education. But for those who are not full-time teachers, we were not able to continue their pay. And so what I could do, I'm literally washing dishes, and I hear God tell me, I want you to give the food to your staff.
Yeah, so that was step number one. And remember, I deal with the stress differently. So I'm literally not saying much, but I'm sharing, of course, with her, and we're talking through some things. That's really just how we flow together. As we begin to talk, God began to speak to us and give us insight and stuff like that. So I'm like literally in the attitude of prayer concerning the whole situation.
Right. Like I think for the first time, like after I had the panic mode on Thursday, when I woke up on Friday.
When the NBA is shut down, it was serious.
When I woke up on Friday, I was like, okay, I can either handle this the way that I normally do, which is in panic and worry mode, or I can do something differently. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do things differently. And he was actually pretty impressed by my response, because this is by far the biggest decision that I've had to make since I've become CEO. And I literally was like at peace. I was at peace. And I know that we had to make some tough decisions.
Tough calls.
We had to make some tough decisions. And then, we found out later on down the line that, those who were employees, that we can do unemployment for them. And there was a lot of other things that came out of that, just from, I don't know if it's as a result of me emailing everybody and constantly email. But when I emailed this is the thing. When I email any of my elected officials, I email with solutions.
Right. And that's just how, anytime you're doing anything, please just don't bring up the problem. Always come with a solution. And that's the way we operate with everything.
Yep.
Instead of talking about the problem, become the solution.
Yeah. So that day was I was at peace.
Yeah.
I in the email, I did tell everybody what I had to do, but I said, here are 2 things that I can do for you now. Even though I may not be able to continue your pay while we're closed, but this is what I can do. Because I wanted them to know that I care about their family. I care about their well-being. I said,
number one, Mr. Scrooge, right?
Right, I'm not Scrooge. What?
Blah, humbug. I got my money.
Right. No. Number one, the first thing I did was I let them know I am in this with you.
Yeah.
I am in this with you. I am not getting paid either.
Yeah.
Just like you're not getting paid, I am not getting paid either. I am not going to be that CEO that takes a paycheck while my people are out there struggling and can't even keep their lights on. That is not going to be me. So number one, we're going to take the hit together. So number 2, I said, you know what? I'm going to do everything in my power to try to restore some of this funding so I can try to do something. It may not be 100% of their pay, but it can be something.
Right.
Okay? So that's what I'm working on. Number 3, I said, we have all of this food. We just ordered it. Look, come in on Monday and go grocery shopping. Go grocery shopping. Get yourself and your family some food. Because we just did it. We just went grocery shopping. Yeah. We just bought all this food, and it was just going to be in the freezer for the next 4 or 5 weeks. So we're like, our team, our team can use it. Their families can use it.
Yeah.
They can eat it. So, and then the fourth thing I did was I said, you know what? Next week is payroll. Normally the payroll is on Friday.
Process it early.
Well, what I did is I processed payroll early because I knew that some of y'all was buying up all the tissue.
Who was buying up all that tissue?
What are you doing? Are you wrapping yourself up like a mummy? I don't get it.
I mean, if you got...
You only need 5 squares.
Well, I don't know. If you use that real thin one, you got to wrap...
5 squares, Chris. 5 squares.
Nah, not that cheap dollar store one. You got to wrap that boy.
8 squares, Chris. 8 squares. So I knew that they're going to need their money. So I ended up processing their payroll earlier than normal so that they can have their paycheck early. And that was what was in my power to do at that time. I am still, right, even in the midst of this, we're already 10 days in, and I am still working every day.
Right.
Working to find other methods, ways that we can restore the pay and some opportunities, even some digital learning opportunities for our staff to be able to continue to work during this time. And I can promise you that this is probably the most poised that I have been in the midst of a crisis. And this is how I know that God has his hand on this situation, on me and on this situation.
Yeah, so there's a lot that she actually shared, and then a couple things that she didn't share that I'll share. But one thing I do want to point out, in the midst of you going through a tough time, find methods to get the light off of yourself and focus on others. I think that was a big key for her to in that time, is saying, you know what? I don't have currently, I don't know how this is going to work, but what I do have right now, I can then begin to give it out to other people. And that's hard sometimes when you don't know where your next.
You know why? Because when you hear about something like this coming, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to start hoarding.
Yeah.
You're going to start hoarding. But if you've been a Christian for any amount of time, you know that that's not how the kingdom of God works. It's sowing and reaping.
Really?
It's sowing and reaping.
Really?
Not hoarding and reaping. Hoarding and reaping. That's not how it works.
Really, who you really are will begin to come out during that tough time.
I want to know. How did you respond?
Right.
How did you respond? Yeah. Did you respond
or did you react?
Or did you react?
Yeah.
Did you respond or did you react? And he's right. I kicked into the next level. Mm-hmm. I kicked in gear. That Monday, which is this past Monday, I said, you know what? We're going to go to school. We're going to start passing out food. Tuesday, we're passing out food. Okay, we're going to disperse. What we have, we're going to disperse. We're going to disperse.
Yeah.
The resources that we have. And people saw my Facebook Live. I did a Facebook Live because I had $200 in my pocket and I could not find a roll of tissue. $200 in my pocket. I'm telling you.
So that
it didn't matter how much money I had in my pocket. Tissue was not going to show up because I had $200 in my pocket.
I don't know. If you go on eBay, some people were selling it for like $200.
No, I even went on Amazon. It was like $95 for one roll.
It was hard to get.
It was really hard to get. Even if I was really tempted to buy that $95 roll.
No, yeah.
But I said, you know what?
By faith.
I'm going to go to the store. I said, nope, this is what happened. And I want you to go to my Facebook page and look at what happened last Saturday.
I like what you did there. So where's your Facebook page?
At Mrs. Ty Woods. Mrs. Ty Woods. So MRSTYWOODS. And look up what happened on March 14th, 2020. March 14th, 2020. I woke up that morning and I just
Don't tell the story. You want to tell the story. Look at she can't hold water.
Yeah, I can't hold water. Oh my God. Because that's not about this. We're going to waste all our time talking about what happened on Saturday.
So, in the midst of that, so you find out what happened, but at the end she said, God will provide. And that was really like what I've been getting in my spirit. No matter what, God will provide. Yeah. Meaning God can figure out a way on our behalf because we didn't know what to do. I mean, the whole country is still figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
And so that Sunday, as she get back, and we're talking again about the situation and really kind of bouncing things back about, hey, how is staff going to get paid? Are there any other methods to generate income through these current business sources? And then what did you say? You said something. A little fear, a little doubt came up. What did you say? What did you say?
I don't know. What did I say?
No, she don't remember what she said. She was saying something. I said, whoa. Remember, you got to go back to what you said. God will provide. And not even 5 minutes later, she went in her email. And what was the email?
Oh, I said, I don't know how I'm going to pay these bills. I don't know how. And I literally went into my email. It was on a Sunday.
Sunday. Now we don't even check.
Most people don't,
Sunday,
work on Sunday. But I got an email back from the commissioner saying we will restore partial funding for your organization, for all the organizations that's going to be closed during the time of COVID-19. And so we were like, what? That was one of the suggestions that I gave, was that we allowed to continue to build the state even though we have to close. And so they will allow us to continue to build the state, and we can still have some form of revenue coming in, which will take care of some of our overhead expenses and some of the activities that we're doing online.
Yeah, I think you kind of glossed over that though.
Gloss. I didn't gloss.
Oh, you've been in the
gloss.
South. You've been in the South too. Like that
I didn't
Southern
gloss.
Belle coming out. That's just some Cali.
Okay, well, why don't you gloss it up then? Gloss it.
No, so in the midst of that, it was literally so quick that we were confronted with what we believe. Are we going to really believe that God will provide, or are we going to allow the circumstances to dictate how we feel and how we begin to operate? Yeah. Because it could have even got in a situation where now we're looking at each other and then the heck on the blame game.
Well, if you would have been making more money,
if you would have
been, you trying to build businesses and stuff,
right? You building businesses, man, come on, but that's not going to solve anything, right?
But I can tell you now, probably 12, 13 years ago, that argument would have happened. It would have happened. Because we was just, we played that blame game like, okay, if he worked more than me, then it's my fault. And if I worked more than him, then he being lazy or he not doing enough as a man and this and that. And I can tell you, honey, it is not okay to keep blaming each other and not actually working together as a team. Not working together as a team, because hey, we're Team Woods. And the only way we're going to win is we win as a team.
Yeah, and I think that's what.
There's no I in team, Chris. No, there's no I.
No, but there is an I in win.
But there is an I in win.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good nugget to kind of leave to, is that remember, you all are in it together. Whether your business is your business or your business is your household, your spouse, your significant other is in it they're in it with you. I think a lot of times what we do is we begin to look at the other person as the enemy instead of relying on each other's strengths, each other's ability, and knowing, hey, all right, I can't shoot the three, but maybe I got a good post game, right? So I can't be mad. I can't be mad at that person. Why you ain't shooting no threes? Well, I can't shoot threes, right? And we do that in our relationships. And it goes back to another episode. Go ahead and go to loveandentrepreneurship.com and look at some of the previous episodes. We was talking about really knowing your roles. You have to know your roles in business. You have to know your roles in relationships in order for it to be fruitful, in order for it to be successful.
Right. I could not have done this without him. Okay, I could not have went through this week. I could not have gone through this week without him. And then I have a team of advisors and a board that are just amazing. What they call amaze balls. Yeah, you never heard of that?
No.
Oh my gosh, I have such an amazing team of advisors who worked with me on the communication strategy, how am I going to facilitate some of the payroll situations, legal, HR, all of the things that we had to navigate through this week, and feeding families, feeding staff. There was a lot of things that we had to navigate through this first week of closures, but we made it. We made it out, and now we are in week 2. We're going into week 2, and we're making light of this. Of course, this is something that is very serious that's going on. We're making light of this. We are trying to stay upbeat. We're trying to stay positive for you guys, for our kids, for the people that are looking up to us as their leaders. And so we just wanted to be transparent with you all to let you know what happened this week with us and how we were able to navigate through this difficult time, and how we are continuing to navigate through this difficult time, because we still haven't gone through the worst yet. I believe that as the time continues to lapse and more workers stop working and unemployment rises, we're going to start seeing some other social issues that arise. Yeah. But if we all work together, we band together, and we can actually stop these things before they start by doing our part.
Yeah, because trust me, it's affecting our economy. Yeah, it really is.
We're all affected. All affected. I have friends that the company does 100 million and 20 million and 50 million. And I can tell you that they are going through the same thing that we're going through. And I mean, maybe not on the same level, but they have to deal with staff layoffs and they downsizing and cuts, and there's a lot going on right now. So don't think like, oh, they got it good. There's not a lot of companies right now that's like profiting. There are some companies that's profiting. Maybe the tissue company, was that Johnson & Johnson?
Johnson & Johnson.
Is that Johnson & Johnson? Procter & Gamble.
Charmin.
Procter & Gamble, yeah.
Okay.
They making a killing right now.
Yeah, so if you own any of their stocks.
Who owned the Purell? Who owned Purell? The sanitizing company. And Clorox is making a killing, okay? So there are some companies that's making a profit right now, and Amazon, their stock haven't went down. I've been watching the stock market. We're like, okay, when do we go in? Because
I did hear something today, but I don't know if it's
about Amazon.
Yes,
their stock.
They're affected, but
they're affected. They're affected.
I'll share that later when I verify the information.
Yeah, we don't want to be fake news. We don't want to be fake news, so we're gonna share it with you when we have the actuals.
So, yep.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have today. That seemed like it went so fast.
Oh, you guys are leaving?
So
y'all don't have nothing else to do. Y'all know y'all stuck in the house.
They ain't got no job, Tommy.
Tommy,
that's Tommy right there. They ain't got no job. So we thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of Love and Entrepreneurship. Tune in next week at 8:30 p.m. where we'll continue checking in with you all. We're going to keep along these lines of managing stress during crisis, and give you some helpful tips. Hopefully some of the things that I was able to navigate this week, hopefully some of the things that I've expressed to you, you take heart and use some you may not use, but hopefully we're able to give you some good tips that you can take into this week.
And so next week, because we love social interaction, some people have been craving it, we're actually going to post a number so you guys can call in and be on the show.
Yeah.
Ask your questions on the live stream.
Yes, that's going to be pretty cool. So we're getting pretty savvy at this thing here. We're getting pretty savvy. Okay, so we thank you guys for tuning in. Okay. Yeah, that's the Cali. Okay, every now and then a little bit of Cali girl comes out, and every now and then I gotta get a little Georgia, Because that's how we bees.
All right, so we thank y'all for tuning in to Love and Entrepreneurship.
See, you don't even know the name.
Because I've been working so hard trying to develop entrepreneurship.
Love and Entrepreneurship Show. That's it for us today. Check us out on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, at loveandentrepreneurship.com.
Catch up on the previous episodes while you got the time.
Because they ain't got no job.
Till next time.
Till next time. See ya.